is a combined first source photographic image of immigrant Italian, Mexican, Asian, Native American workers leaving their company housing to join a strike. The lower image is the funeral of Ricardo Falcón, who was killed just outside of La Junta as he went into a gas station seeking water for his overheated car on his way to a civil rights march. The gas station had a sign that read, "Mexicans and dogs, not allowed." The imagery here is hand-painted and photographic in origin. The final work, a digital print on gold aluminum. Here, Courtney Gonzalez and Cesar Chavez speak of bringing the great boycott to Colorado to improve the condition of farm workers. This image, taken at the time of the dedication of the La Memoria de Nuestra Tierra in Denver International Airport, where you can still see it, is taken in the La Junta graveyard, where the Mexican graves were not maintained and allowed to go fallow. Here, members of my family, including my Blackfoot aunt, are rededicating the family plot where my mother's sisters, brothers, great-grandfathers, and uncles are buried. You see the La Familia Baca. So, as a result of our calling this to the attention of the governor of Colorado and the creation of my work in the Denver International Airport, we were able to reclaim those graves. And this is a moment in which it has come full circle. In front of the BBC, and with the support of the Catholic Church, we re-sanctified the graves and recovered my family's plot. The next work is a digital print production called The Migration of the Golden People. And it is a work in which I had, and a story which I had little knowledge of. And so I was led very carefully through this process by the people of Central America who guided my research. The largest diaspora of people out of El Salvador live in a place called Pico Union in Los Angeles. This is my team of young people who are descendants of those who escaped the war in El Salvador in the 1980s. They conducted interviews with their family members, collecting photographs and researching a timeline of events depicted in the mural. This is the Great Wall process now applied to a neighborhood. The collaborations with Latin American scholars, with their youth and their parents, and the Central American Research and Education Center. These are now all part of the images in the Memoria Historia archives that are available online. Photos were collected from people's family albums, many carried out of the country at the moment they were fleeing a brutal war. An estimated 75,000 people were killed in that war. Images like this began to appear, and the question began to be, what should we use? How should we depict this story? How could people live with the images that we were finding as part of the story? These are people at the moment of their disappearance. These are perhaps the last image taken of a family member as they were disappeared. This is a drawing from a woman who is a survivor of the Almazote massacre on the right-hand side of the imagery. Telling the stories, we were directed by the scholars and survivors and found ourselves negotiating between the children and their parents because this was the first time their parents were telling the stories. This generational conflict arose because the young people argued against the difficult imagery and in their mural. And many parents wanted to share their story with their children for the first time, were often had been reluctant to tell them the story in the past. So they began to decide which image should be included. How could they balance this imagery? Agreement was reached on this image. A resilient young mother standing fearlessly in front of paramilitary troops is a hopeful image. Each image was determined by my collaborators, and I told the story that I have no personal knowledge of. The completed digital mural is hand-painted, 37 feet long and 15 feet wide, both painted and digitally generated. And on the left-hand side, you can see the sabine tree, which is a symbol of the Mayan connection to the other world. The war dead are represented in the small calacas in the ground, like apparitions. Rigoberta Menchú weaves the story in the sky. You see people being disappeared in the background. Oscar Romero and the volcano with Faragundo Martí, Constance Ayala, and Sandino represented in the imagery. This digital mural is installed in a traditional traditional mariflage technique, combining first source materials and hand-painted imagery. It serves as a Mayan map, a method of telling the story of the migration of the Golden People, and is used to tell the stories to the visitors. So if you go to the center, you might be guided on a tour by a young person who will tell you the story by each image calling to them a part of the narrative. But I haven't abandoned the traditional mural, and I have an ongoing project that is called The World Wall, A Vision of the Future Without Fear. And if this is about war, this piece is about peace. It's a traveling installation work of 9 panels at the present that are 10 feet by 30-foot works on canvas. They're installed in a circle and with a polling and cabling system. And to each country to which it's traveled, another work is added. It's inspired by David Alfaro Siqueiros' March of Humanity work. And to each country to which it's traveled, another work is added by an international team through international dialogues, interdependence, and global cooperation. It came from an idea from a Great Wall kid who said at 16, we should take the processes we learned in our neighborhoods to an international level. And so that's what we did. Here you see the World Wall installed in East Los Angeles and Lincoln Park when we brought the work back to its origins in East Los Angeles. This is one of the pieces completed by my team called Triumph of the Hearts. And each of these images is about how a society might transform itself from a war economy to an economy that is based on peace. And we realized as we were producing the work, we really didn't know what peace looked like. And here you can see we're looking at the very first step that a society would have to take, which is self-examination. Each of us realizing we're part of the solution. The individual walks out into the shadow of Gandhi, which is the precedent, a historical precedent. The winds of war always lurking on the horizon. The image was derived, this image was derived from the Hopi prophecies. When we said, well, what does peace look like? We thought, well, it's the absence of war, and we couldn't figure out what it was the presence of. Or one of my students said, is it everyone sitting around watching TV? So we began to speak to people, and the Hopi elders